got a showcase day on about an hour and a bit today, and one of the businesses that's pitching is a bricks and mortar business. Primarily, it's got two sites. Kris earned 2 million in 2 years, and the weird thing is, I posted that in the investment communities, and within minutes there was about 3 or 4 VCs signed up to come and look at a bricks and mortar business. So the landscape is definitely changing. I don't think it's a bad thing, because lifestyle businesses have often struggled. You know, they know they've got a potentially scalable business there, but they've often struggled to gain investment or finance just because they're seen as a lifestyle business. And thankfully that's starting to change. You loud and clear as well.
Oh, brilliant. Welcome, Kris. And welcome to my kitchen, to everybody. Autumn is finally here. My turtle walk is chillier in the mornings. He's right there on the kitchen counter where he will stay so that he doesn't bark. I'm all alone with Toto. Toto's my dog. He's our family dog. He's been with us for a little while. So welcome to my kitchen with Yvonne. Every week we hold these lunch and learn sessions as a chance to pause in the middle of a busy week. We sit around my kitchen table together and we have honest conversations about the real challenges that we're all facing as founders, as schools, and as communities in general. Our aim is simple: to tackle the big questions, to share practical solutions, and to leave you with something that you can act on immediately. And today we're tackling one of the hardest areas of being a founder and sometimes of life in general, and that's money. Where is the money? Funding. And earlier on, I was watching The Lion King with my kids, and I just couldn't help but feel a little bit like Simba. He was full of hope at the beginning, and then he was hit by terrible setbacks. And as he was waiting to rise, everybody around him was seeing him as a king, and he was lifted up in that moment where he was being seen as a king. And that's kind of how funding works, right? You as a founder have these great ideas, and on the journey you're hit by setbacks after setback, and as you get the funding, it gives you that opportunity to lift your business up. So today we're only promising one thing. This conversation with Kris will leave you with clarity about what's happening in the funding climate, what moves you need to make, and the chance that you will get your questions actually asked directly to somebody who has helped founders raise over 25 million in just the last 3 years. So, pulling up a chair in my kitchen today is Kris Jones. Kris is co-founder of Magic Source, and he's helped founders, of course, raise quite a lot of money, so he knows what he's talking about. But on top of that, he's got this vibrant community where I met him with thousands and thousands of startups who are working across lots of accelerators. And we are sitting at my table really excited to speak with Kris. He will help you cut through the noise of today's funding climate. And if anybody can do it, it's Kris. Kris, every founder is asking the same thing right now. Mm-hmm. Are banks actually lending? Are investors still writing checks? Welcome to my kitchen. Let us know what you're thinking. Start by telling our guests who you are and why they should listen to you and what you are seeing. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Kris. I'm co-founder of MagicSource.online. It's a funding platform purely for underrepresented founders. I'm also head of education at DiversityX and admin of a VC community with around 2,000 members. All young people trying to make their way in VC. So I'm a former bank manager, and in total I think I've helped people raise over about 70 million so far since I started playing with startups, and I've been doing that for about 11 years. So I've been doing that quite a bit. Diving straight into the funding question, are banks lending? I think things have become more fluid. I think things have gone beyond the high street. We tackle the pool funding of startups and businesses in general. I think a lot of changes in that, even over this last 6 months. Around 2022, we started to see in general. We saw a lot of angels direct investors. Most people invested traditionally in lifestyle businesses as well as tech businesses. They started to get older. They started to retire. So it didn't look good. It was definitely not rosy. And it's only in the last 12 months it started to change. We're seeing more founder operator investors coming into the ecosystem, and then the people who founded lifestyle businesses as well as tech businesses. And most of the investors I meet these days are looking for businesses that know how to commercialize and become profitable. And they're looking for solid returns, much as they are for things. But that landscape has changed. An equity investment perspective. A lot of them are now also using instruments like finance as well. There's lots of international players starting to come into this, where you can raise finance based on your pipeline. So there's stuff like pipe.com. So if you know that if you've got a historic revenue and you've got LOIs and potential orders for the coming year, you can use stuff like pipe.com, which will give you money up front based on what you're going to earn for that year. So if you're in that juxtaposition where you're doing well, but you need people to scale, or you need something to happen to scale, and banks aren't lending you the money because high street banks haven't changed that much in terms of who they'll lend to. The statistics are showing that, when you take Sybils and things like that out of the equation, it's not changed much. And particularly if you're an underrepresented founder, it's as hard as ever. Once you factor in your gender, your postcode, you're still stuffed.
The usual stuff.
It still sucks, and it's horrible, and it's not likely to change. That's part of the reason why
I was going to ask that. How do we change it?
Start a new bank. That's the unfortunate thing, and most of them use the same credit reference agencies that are loaded against people based on gender and postcode and ethnicity and all the rest of it from the outset. So you'd have to start a new credit reference agency and a new bank, which is just ridiculous. But thankfully, we are seeing these alternative kinds of finance come in, and alternative types of investor who are looking at things like convertible loan notes. They're looking at potentially loans because it gives them continuing liquidity until an exit. They're not just looking at out-and-out tech businesses. Even VCs, even tier one VCs now are looking at propositions that are a mix of service and tech. And there are more tech-enabled businesses that are raising. We've got a showcase day on about an hour and a bit today, and one of the businesses that's pitching is a bricks and mortar business. Primarily, it's got 2 sites. It's earned 2 million in 2 years. And the weird thing is, I posted that in the investment communities, and within minutes there was about 3 or 4 VCs signed up to come and look at a bricks and mortar business. So the landscape is definitely changing. I don't think it's a bad thing. because lifestyle businesses have often struggled. You know, they know they've got a potentially scalable business there, but they've often struggled to gain investment or finance just because they're seen as a lifestyle business. And thankfully, that's starting to change. But
well,
banks,
that says a lot. Yeah. So for anybody who, if we were to just double back on this, because it might, you know, we could make a joke about it, but I am those underrepresented founders, right? I'm a female founder with a funny accent from a funny country, right? Just in that in itself, that's always going to be a challenge. And then starting a business, and of course, when you do start a business, everybody wants you to have that, you know, magic word track record. Have you done this before? How successful have you been? Have you had an exit? You know, all those questions that come in, even to the point where if you can show revenue, sometimes that's not enough. It's like level of revenue. Are you going to put your house, your kidney,
your kids,
everything in there in order for you to get funded? So the same challenges are there, but do you think they're compounded in the environment in which we currently are operating? A lot of people are saying we're probably in a recession, they're just not calling it so.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's certainly not making it better. But nature evolves a vacuum, and so do ecosystems. So this is why I think we're now seeing, because that has been compounded, there's still a need that needs to be met. And whether by osmosis or design, you do find things that then come and plug the gaps. Because yes, bank financing has always been difficult, but I think the alternative financing doesn't look at things in that same lens. So something like future revenue, consideration type finance, that doesn't look at you because of who you are or where you come from. The only thing it looks at is the pound, shillings and pence that's on the balance sheet, the letters of intent you may have, the contracts you may have. So obviously that is just more so for people with some track record, but it's more blind than the prejudice of banks, because it's outright prejudice. And the fact that you are now finding investors that will invest more in lifestyle businesses, even if they're at a nascent stage, as long as there's some track record. That's the same as it would be for any business right now. I think every investor is the same. Being able to fund somebody on the back of a napkin, those days are gone, because they expect you to be able to bootstrap your way to some revenues and some track record to show that you can do it. Another business, as an example, is this pitching at the showcase. They don't have the tech yet, but they sold about 15 grand's worth of books. And one of the ways they're looking at financing, building the tech in their business, is the wait list they've got. This backlog of people who love more of their book, but they couldn't afford a print run. And again, in this case, it's a black female founder, and just 15 grand would buy her enough books to do a print run big enough to earn about 150 grand, which would more than pay for the tech and then not need financing and stuff. So it's sometimes about thinking outside the box as well, and what can I sell? What are the different ways I can generate revenue? And I've learned some of that over the summer, even though I've got obviously a tech platform. I found ChatGPT invaluable this summer, and one of the things I did was I got to psychoanalyze who I am as a leader, and then number two, I told it that, right, I'm going off sick for 2 months. What would you do if you were leading the company over the next 2 months? And we ended up spitballing, and it came up with these micro monetization programs. Sometimes you don't realize you can feed all this stuff into AI and say, these are all the things I've got, these are the things I do. what could I micro monetize out of that I could build for zero cost? And we end up doing that. We end up launching a product in the summer. We're just about to launch another that's really small ticket for people. It's like 75 quid, and they'll get that credit back if they join the platform. But it was a success. And I think these are the different ways that people have to look at bootstrapping. Is I have this, I have A, could that be split into B and C? And sometimes that traction that other people are looking for can come from the most unlikeliest of sources. So even if you're a consultant, there are things you can monetize in different ways of doing things, different ways of packaging up what you do into smaller packages to make things affordable or appeal to an adjacent audience, or even a try before you buy audience. And it just validates your business further and helps you either with finance or investment.
That's brilliant. I think it's really good to know one of the things as well, lifestyle businesses, a lot of people really struggle, right? If you come up with a lifestyle or what they call side hustle, not knowing whether that's going to be viable for somebody else who's thinking about putting money in, right? To know that they are investors that would fund, but I think the brilliant bit that you've just said there is look at making things affordable. How can you break it down into really small packages so that it's more affordable to a larger number of people, but also gives you an opportunity to validate. I remember when I was growing up, we used to go to the shop and we would buy. You'd find the shopkeepers in the shop would buy the bigger tub of cooking oil or something, and then they'd put it into little, smaller bags, because that made it more affordable, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're saying. You can package it in a much more creative manner, because then it also meets you where you are with the marketing efforts. And I'm making notes because I can promise you, Kris, I'm using this for myself as well. This is a takeaway that we can all use. So yeah, really appreciate. You know what? I think that's the value of the fact that you have been a banker, right? You understand money, in the sense of you have, as you say, you've seen a lot of money go to people. 70 million is not something, to joke about. 20 million is a fairly large chunk of money. And if you can sell enough product, like you're saying, that's so true. Sell 15,000 worth of product, that shows you've got revenue, and that can then raise 10 times more. And then you probably then don't need to give a huge chunk of your business the next time you're raising, if you think about raising from an investor down the line. Yeah, so that's brilliant. Some of the parallels, for example, with sellers that are going into schools, and one of the things we work a lot with sellers is they will hear this, schools coming up with, we don't have the budget. If you have been creative yourself in raising, money, for your business, it's so much easier to have those conversations with the schools, right?
Yeah.
You come up, those kind of creative solutions as well. Yes,
I use leasing so much because that's one thing I probably left out of my CV at the top, was that I sold into schools and colleges for over a decade. Which is probably
we definitely have to call it this, Kris.
I did. I think the highlight of that was winning £1 million contract to supply every college in Wales with consumables. And you're constantly in education having to get creative. One of the things I utilised a lot was lease finance, because a lot of people think that lease finance was just for something physical. But one thing that people like Bluestone did was they allowed you to then lease services and or software, which was a game changer. because what it meant was that they could spread costs over a longer period. So if you can't fit it into somebody's capex for that year, you might be able to fit in their OPEX budget. And obviously we all know about the seasonality with schools and colleges, is that obviously there's budget dump time, there's new budget time, and you still got to service them in the lull. And right now is one of those beautiful lull periods, because they're more concentrated on fixing everything that's wrong. Now everybody's actually back in school, and trying to get hold of the IT managers is a nightmare. So what leasing can do for you is obviously try and help elongate those things, because those needs still crop up. September is horrible. So it comes back to that value proposition with the IT managers, and instead of being a hard sell of look, I'm just looking to touch base and how are you, because they know it's a sales call. Get straight to the point is probably my advice on that one. Just say, if there is stuff you need and stuff that's falling over, because stuff inevitably does in September when everybody comes back, then it's putting that message across that even if you haven't got the budget right now, we can probably help fix that if it's an infrastructure thing and you're lost as to what to do next. And leasing can often be that way out for them, because obviously they've mostly spent their capex, or it's been allocated to a project, whereas OPEX proposition with the IT managers, and instead of being a hard sell of look, I'm just looking to touch base and how are you, because they know it's a sales call. Get straight to the point is probably my advice on that one. Just say, if there is stuff you need and stuff that's falling over, because stuff inevitably does in September when everybody comes back, then it's putting that message across that even if you haven't got the budget right now, we can probably help fix that if it's an infrastructure thing and you're lost as to what to do next. And leasing can often be that way out for them, because obviously they've mostly spent their capex, or it's been allocated to a project, whereas OPEX, there's always been a slush somewhere.
Right, yeah, but that's one of the, I think that's the kind of like gold nugget with finance, right? How to balance money in and money out. And leasing gives you that leeway. The other one as well, I suppose, how about things like trade credit? So that you extend the amount of time you have to pay the suppliers, and then offer that as the difference with the school. So that then is giving you a bit of a balancing between when your money is coming in and when your other money is going out. And you're kind of like riding that balancing scale with money. So now you have the money coming in, the revenue coming in, the products going out, but then you also have consistent income, and the time you're paying your suppliers versus the time that your money is coming in is then being balanced, and you can make those decisions to kind of keep climbing the ladder. So that's a really valuable, I think, framework that you're sharing, Kris, when it comes to funding and finance. Yeah, so yeah, thank you so much for that. I would love to maybe give an opportunity where we've got some people in the audience where maybe they could either pop in some questions in the chat. What are some of those burning questions that a lot of people are experiencing right now? So let's just see if there's any questions coming in the chat. As we wait for those questions, before the session today, I just asked a few founders. I was speaking to what was some of the questions that they had, and this is one of the questions that somebody said: how do you know when it's the right time to raise in this climate? Is there something that they need to be looking out for?
If you're raising from investors, then if you're a non-tech business, so if you're just a tech-enabled business or a people-centric business, then having that a little bit of track record behind your revenue, and it doesn't matter even if it's a bit yo-yo, especially if any investment would help even out the peaks and troughs, or see companies through the peaks and troughs of that seasonality that comes through being in education and education selling. That's good. Letters of intent, pipeline, knowing what your pipeline is like with your renewals and all the rest of it, and being able to paint that picture for investors, great. If you're an ed tech business, you can raise pretty much as soon as you've got some revenues. That's all investors are looking for. And we're also seeing now, as well as these alternative methods come in, like convertible loan notes and loans from different entities as well as investors. They will invest at an early stage if they can see potential. So again, that's where those letters of intent, potential contracts, memorandum of understanding with an organization can make a world of difference. So yes, you can't raise on the back of a beer mat anymore, but you can if you've got a little bit of a track record, a proof of concept that you're doing well in this, and if given enough money, you could turn this into this. So it's being able to put that forward to investors in a pragmatic as well as aspirational way. So I want this is my big dream, but I think it'll work because I've already proven this, and that I've done this before, so I can do this with that.
Okay, that's a really good point. Yeah, thank you for that, Kris. What mistakes do you see founders making when they approach investors? Not in general, but right now, with the kind of climate that we're in.
It's approaching the wrong people at the wrong time is the biggest mistake. Don't go to VC unless you've got at least 10K monthly recurring revenue in the bank. If you're a tech business, if you're a non-tech business and you go into PE or angels, in the current environment, again, it's do your research. Nobody really does their research on the investor. And the other key thing is build a relationship first, whether it be PE, VC, or angel. Actually get to know those people first. Most of the people on here obviously can sell because they're selling into education. You wouldn't try selling unless you built a value proposition to a school or a college or anything else, or a university. So why would you do the same to an investor? You need to build a value proposition. You need to know, in essence, why you'd be a good fit for their portfolio. So build a relationship, get to know them as a human first. The transactionalism of the early 2020s is way over, and I'm glad. It was a bad thing that there was so much cash in the system. It now forces people to build.
It can work against you, isn't it? I think one of the really great things sometimes about bootstrapping, or about having not as much money to begin with, it actually encourages creativity. And running a business is
people are thinking outside the box
more than anything.
What they can do. So yeah, it's much better from that perspective. I see the question keep popping up about, is there funding for impact driven or social enterprises? There's more around now than ever. There are people who are specifically looking for social impact businesses to invest in. So Daring Capital is an example, Gemstein, and there's lots of impact driven investors that are looking for stuff to invest in as well. So the environment is better than it has been. You've also got Growth Impact Fund, Big Issue Invest. There's a whole bunch of them that have a more philanthropic way of investing. They still expect it to generate returns, and they still expect you to be able to earn a profit or at least wipe your face with the money, because an investment has, otherwise it's a grant. So if you're able to deliver a return on that investment back to the person who's invested it and can demonstrate that, then there's probably more choices now around than there ever was.
That's encouraging to know, Kris. I've got one last one. Is money going, sorry, hold on. Oh yeah, this one. Valuations seem to be all over the place. So the question is, valuation seems to be all over the place. How do founders protect themselves? So it's that old chicken and egg, right? Am I the source of the valuation, or is this the VC or the angel going to tell me what my valuation is for my business? Kris, do we still have you? Hi, Kris. I think Kris is having a little bit of a challenge with his tech. So we'll just do a quick recap, and when Kris is ready, then we'll go back into.
Obviously, if there's any other questions, you want to fire at me before
our quick fire round. So we are speaking with Kris Jones. Kris Jones is a former banker. He has helped businesses raise over £70 million of funding. And one of the things that Kris has really been honest about, and I suppose if anybody has ever borrowed money for a loan or borrowed money for a mortgage, then you would probably have had the age-old credit reference question face you, or even if you're going for credit cards. And so what Kris is saying is, you know what, it is true that banks do lend, and there is what Kris has been kind enough to say, bias. There is bias when it comes to gender, underrepresented founders, and postcodes. The usual bias still remains, and Kris says to us, the bias comes from the fact that a lot of lending is done on the premise that you have the magic number of the credit references. So maybe it might be worth us bringing Kris back on another episode for him to tell us what it is about your credit. How can you build your credit? Because this is one thing we cannot escape, right? How do you come out favorable when it comes to your credit? And another thing Kris has been talking about is alternative investments, things like convertible notes
in the group,
and alternative loans. And he's also talked about pitching and the pitching events that he has with his company, Magic Source. I know when Kris comes back, he will give us a little bit of an in into Magic Source. Magic Source doing great things for founders when it comes to helping put you in front of investors. And one of the things we are going to do with Kris is have a further conversation on how that works. But we probably will not be able to do it on today's Lunch and Learn.
So I think it's probably a good point at which to wrap up if there's no further questions. And obviously, if there's anything you do want to ask, or if there's anything I can help with, just holler. You know, I have a couple of routes to find me.
Kris might be having some challenges.
It's lovely to meet you all, and Yvonne, thanks for having me as a guest.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kris. My apologies for the issues that you've had with your tech today, but we will catch up soon. And as we wrap up, Thanks, Kris, for having us in my kitchen. Thanks, Kris, for joining us in my kitchen. Now, just to wrap up again, if you're thinking about raising, here are some things that might be really useful for you to have on hand. Have some letters of intent. Have some contracts that you potentially have lined up, even if they are not producing any revenue yet. Just that opportunity, just that signal that somebody has shown that they might be willing to work with you might actually help for you to get investment. The other thing that Kris has mentioned is building a wait list. He said, if you have a wait list of clients, like he just gave us an example of a business he's currently working with to raise money, that can actually help you generate some investment before you even start generating revenue. He has given us the example of a lender called Psychoanalyze, who would be looking. Psychoanalyze, who are a business that actually managed to raise revenue off of the back of investment off of the back of £15,000 of revenue before their tech was ready. So that's another way of doing it. You can raise the money before your tech is ready. Kris has shown us the value of thinking outside of the box. How about small packages? How can you package your offering into small micro packages, which would make it much more affordable for people to try your product before where they're not going to think we invest so much money with you, but then it also gives you an opportunity to start generating revenue, and with that, then you can move to the next level. And finally, Kris talked about lease finance, and the fact that lease finance is actually very attractive within education. Why? Because education and we all know, if you're selling into education, about those ups and downs, those cycles within education. Why does that happen? Because educations operate against budgets set by the government. So right at the beginning, they are, they have larger budgets, and then as they come to the end of term or end of the school year, you normally will experience something that they call budget dump time. Why do they normally dump the budget towards the end of the school year? It's because if they have shown in their last school year that they didn't need as much budget, what generally tends to happen in the next school year is they get a smaller budget from the government, because they have shown they can operate with a smaller budget. It's a really funny thing, but it does happen where they dump. They're looking at ways in which they can actually spend the money before the school year is over. Now, if you're thinking about getting money from investors, key takeaway: build relationships first. Do research, build a value proposition. They want to know who you are. Your value proposition will do that. But then if you build a relationship with the investors, and this takes time, when you then come to present your value proposition, they're much more likely to want to do business with you because they now know who you are. So these are some really key takeaways that we've been able to have today in this conversation that we've had. And we're hoping to bring Kris back for another episode because I really believe that Kris has a lot to offer. One, from his perspective as somebody that used to lend money as a bank manager and managed other people raising money, and now from his perspective from a business that is helping founders to raise money from VCs. So he's got a really interesting tech, which unfortunately, due to tech challenges, he was not able to tell us about. But we're really glad that he was so open, because that's the kind of clarity that we founders need right now, where the environment is very, very difficult. So if you want to know more about Kris, you can find out about him on magicsource.online, or you can go to his LinkedIn, Kris Jones, and you can connect with him. He's very open, as you saw today, very willing to help founders. The money hasn't disappeared, it's just shifted. Now, before we go, I would just like to mention something exciting that we have here at LocaeRise. we're building a LocaeRise to be bigger and better within the education industry. And just like founders hit funding walls, schools sometimes do. That's the reason why we created LocaeRise Match. What we're doing on LocaeRise Match is we're helping schools to identify their OBC, their one big change. And this is normally one of the 4 underfunded areas within education. That's well-being, that's the academic side of education, teacher training, and special education needs. They're really heavily underfunded, and schools really find it difficult to find enough budget to be able to find the provisions for it. But we know that there are very many value-driven founders that can bring absolutely gold products to schools. And what we are doing is helping schools work with their communities, so that is parents and other businesses around the school, to build what we call school-backed finance. You shop online, and when you shop online, you round off your purchase. And we use that money in a pot through our charity to identify where there is the most need. We then match the schools with a seller who's value-driven and can help the schools alleviate their one big change. So what we are saying is, if you're a seller and you're selling into schools and you keep hearing that dreaded word, we don't have a budget, or the other side of that, you keep coming through the wall, as we call it, the wall of gatekeepers, then we would ask you to book a complimentary call with us. It could be the one thing that you need. If you're a match, and you're that value-driven vendor that we're looking to work with, there's potential that we could match you to a school that is looking for what you have to offer. And best of all, we could help to fund it, and not just fund it once, but we actually look to fund it over a long time, because these 4 key areas usually need a long period of time for whatever it is that's the stumbling block in the school to be released. So we encourage you, the link is on, it's just below, book the call, and we really look forward to hearing from you. Next week, we'll be joined by Emily from Emily Marketing. She will come with some really actionable ways in which you can make your marketing work for you. She should know. She lives in a small village in Lincolnshire. She started out in education, and she's now causing waves. If anybody can stir up the marketing pot, then it's Emily. Or as she says, if a small girl from a small village who is now in London, where everybody thinks you need to be when it comes to marketing, can make a change, then anybody can. Only if you follow some repeatable marketing systems. So bring your lunch, bring your questions, and join the conversation. So quick reminder, book a call. Let's talk about some of the challenges you're having selling into education. And until next week, thanks for joining us around my